That's about negative exponents. We talked about it a little bit last year. Do you remember the negative exponent, what it means? What's it mean? Flip it. Flip it. Reciprocal. If it's in a negative in the numerator, it becomes positive in the denominator. If it's negative in the denominator, positive in the numerator, vice versa. You flip the position of it. We're going to talk about the product of power theorems for exponents. When you multiply like bases, what do you do to the exponents? Remember that? You add them together. And then we're going to talk about circle relationships. So the first two pretty much review, hopefully. All right, negative exponents. By definition, x to the negative n power is equal to 1 over x to the n. It just says that you can take the reciprocal of it. It changes the sign of the exponent, not the number, not the fraction, just the sign of the exponent. So write the reciprocal of exponential expression, which changes the sign of the exponent. That's a key thing. So if I had, I don't want black. So if I gave you what is x to the negative 2 power, what is that the same thing as? 1 over x squared. So the problem I get into is when I tell students if I had 3 to the negative 2 power, what's that the same thing as?
1 over 3.
It's 1 over 3 squared, which is correct, 1 over 9. That is 1/9. And that's what you want to be careful of, is you want to make sure that is 1/9. Okay, we got fist bumps going on. Yeah, I know that part. I'm just making sure they're with me so that they're not missing something. Okay. People right there want to write that as -9. The way I go through it is I say 3 raised to the power, which is 9, and then I say, do I take the reciprocal or not? And I just look for that negative exponent. That's kind of my systematic approach I go about it with. I don't go to writing it like this and then going to 1/9. 3 squared is 9. It's not 9, it's 1/9 reciprocal. So if I give you this, what's your answer? 9. That is the same thing as, and I'm just going to write it just for some of you that want to do it. That's the same thing as 3 squared in the numerator. You move it up, change the sign of the exponent, and your answer is 9. What does this have a value of? 1 over 27. This negative exponent says you need to move it down to the denominator because it's in the numerator. What about this one?
1 over 27.
It is 1 over 27. First of all, if you just look at this, here's your thought that you want to go about trying to solve this one. So your thought, the first thing is I look at -3 and to the 3rd power. So my first thought is, what is -3 to the 3rd? What does that have a value of? -27. And then I work with this sign right here. So I put that negative in front, which makes it positive 27. And then I work with this negative right here, which does what to it? Makes it a reciprocal. So those are kind of the thought process I go through. Take the base, -3, raise it to the power. Worry about if you got to change the sign, and then flip it if you have to flip it. The things that I look for. We go to this one. What's your answer? Is it going to be positive or negative? Negative, because your base is just 3. Your base is not -3. The base is 3. 3 squared is 9. Flip it, and it's going to be negative. So it's -1 over 9. What's your base? -3. -3 squared is 9. And then the negative exponent says it's going to be 1/9. Question. X squared, what does that mean? x times x. What does x cubed mean? So if I talk about taking x squared times x to the third, that's the same thing as x to the fifth. So that says product theorem. If you multiply like bases, excuse me, you add the exponents. So it's something like this: x to the a times x to the d times x to the d. What you do is you add the exponents together. Multiply like bases, add the exponents. Simplify. If you are simplifying the expression like this, you should only have each variable occur how many times? Once. So if we look at the x's, we have x squared, x to the negative fifth, x to the fifth, x to the 0. We look at the y exponents. If there is not an exponent there, what's that understood to be? A 1. So if I group them together, we are going to have x to what power? To the second. You will have y to what power?
The negative third.
Negative third. I am okay with this as an answer, but you better be careful. Sometimes they will ask you to write it as all positive exponents. Certain textbooks will say positive exponents is simplified. It's like the reducing of a fraction. They say you got to have positive exponents. To me, I do not care. If I asked you to write it all as positive exponents, what would your answer be?
X squared over 1.
There it is with all positive exponents. What about all negative exponents? All in the denominator. X to the negative second and y to the third. Change the sign of the exponents. All of those mean the same thing. It's just which form you put it in. Simplify. So if I simplify, there we go. It's taking a little bit of time. It's going to be y to what power? Positive third. 1 plus 5 is 6 minus 3 is 3. X to the negative 6. There's your simplified answer. If we look at the second one, y to what power? 4. X to the negative first. Negative 3 plus 2 is negative 1. Then you, y to the fourth over x is going to be the same thing. Correct. Now, if you get into a fraction or a rational number, meaning that we have a fraction involved, and I ask you to simplify. If you look at this numerator, it's the same thing as the value that I have up above, the very first example that I gave you. So if I were to simplify the numerator, this is how I would recommend doing it. I would simplify the numerator, simplify the denominator, and then move them up. Most of you are used to doing something like this, and you say this becomes not x, but y to the 6th. So you move this up and you go, oh, that's going to be y to the 6th. You're going to move this up, and it's going to be x to the 3rd. You move the y up, that gives you y to the 10th being negative. And then you move the x up, and you get x to the negative 2nd. Instead of moving so many terms up and then trying to add all of those exponents together, because you got lots of numbers to add together there. I try to simplify that, and I would recommend just working with like the numerator first, then the denominator. So if I work with the numerator, you're going to get y to the 3rd x to the negative 6th. And if you work with the denominator, when you group the denominator, you get y to the 4th, x to the negative 1st. That's why I would not write it as a fraction when simplifying it, as in that right there, Jared. When you have it in this format, now you're only moving two variables up, y to the negative 4th, x to the 1st. So now what you want to do is you want to focus on just adding those exponents together, which gives you y to the negative 1st and x to the negative 5th. And there's your answer. If you wanted as positive exponents, it's going to be 1 over x to the 5th, y to the 1st. Either answer. I don't know if the three of you that this is your first year in here, I don't know if you worked with, you subtract exponents from numerator, denominator. The students here, I show them that when they first learned this, which was last year, they find it easier to move it up. Because the problem they run into is if sometimes you have x to the 3rd over x to the negative 3rd, is that x to the 0? No. And that's what sometimes happens is when you put a negative in there, they get signs mixed up. It is x to the numerator minus denominator of negative 3, which is going to make it x to the 6th. For those here, they didn't like doing that. They chose to move this up and change the sign of the exponent and then just group those two together to say it's x to the 6th. I don't care. Subtracting the exponents, numerator minus denominator exponent is perfectly fine. Just be careful if it's minus a negative number. That's where students make the mistake too often and they decide just to bring it up. Does that clarify it? So you're okay with your subtraction of your exponents if that's the way you do it. Right, the power theorem for exponents. When you take a power, raise it to a power. What do you do to the exponents? Now you multiply the exponents. So if I have x to the 2nd and I am raising it to the 3rd power, that means x squared times x squared times x squared, which is x to the 6th. Instead of writing it out and adding the exponents, it's a lot easier just to take those two numbers. You see the parenthesis there? That parenthesis operation means multiplication. Multiply those two exponents together. So you get x to the 6th. Now, if you have multiple terms, if you have multiple variables there, factors, you have to raise each one to that power. Terms, you're going to do something a little bit different. So I want you to, if we simplify the first one, where you want to start, this should be review, is right there and right there. If you start with that, you have x. What does this become? X to the negative 6th, because you multiply those exponents together. You have to take the negative 3 and distribute it to both exponents, so you get x to the negative 3rd, y to the 6th. Now add your exponents together, and you end up with x to the negative 8, y to the 7th. Is there a question on that one, or you see where each one of those values comes from? The next one. First thing is this right here. What's that become? Y to the 6th. Then you have y to the negative 3rd, and this becomes x to the 6th. So if I simplify, you get did I copy those directly down here? I think I did. So this becomes y to the 3rd, x to the 6th. The numerator is at exactly the same, x to the negative 3rd squared, y to the negative 2nd, negative 3. We said that had a value of x to the negative 8, y to the 7th. So if I simplify that, subtract your exponents if you want to. Move this up, That's y to the negative third. So you end up with y to the fourth. You move this up, x to the negative 6, which leaves you with x to the negative 14. Simplify the numerator, simplify the denominator, move it up, change the sign of the exponents, and add. I think that's how most of you have worked through these. The last thing we want to talk about, circle relationships. Is there a question or anything so far? I've kind of thrown it at you. Review from last year, I hope. Circle relationships. The area of a circle is 12.2 square meters. What is the approximate circumference of the circle? Area is pi r squared. But there's two things. The first thing, area of a circle is 12.2. And they want to know what is the circumference of the circle. Circumference is 2 pi r. So the area, they give you the area is 12.2. Divide by pi. I'm going to, for this purpose, I just am concerned about the process you go through. So I'll go ahead and put it as back as pi. Divide by pi, but then what do you have to do? You have to take the square root. So you have 12.2 divided by pi is equal to r squared. To get rid of a square, you have to take the square root. So that means that your radius is equal to the square root of 12.2 divided by 3.14, whatever that is. Pi, divided by pi. It's going to be right around 4, correct? Oh, I mean, not. Then I put it 4. What I was saying,
Okay.
that is pi. And 12.2 divided by pi is right around 4, right? That's known as the radicand of that square root. The square root of 4 is approximately 2. It's approximately 2. Now you can take your calculators if you wanted to for that particular part. And if we did, if you took 12.2 and you divided by pi, you get 3.93, which we said an approximation. Because this says approximate the circumference. So we said that this right here is 12 divided by 3, approximately 4. Square root of 4 is 2. You come over here, and what's your circumference approximately equal to? 2 times pi times a radius of 2, which is going to be approximately equal to 4 pi, which is approximately, it's 12.56, so that many meters, right? So you can approximate it. And if I actually calculated it for you, let me calculate it just to tell you how close you are. Square root of the answer, and then times 2. It's 3.97 pi. 12.45. We said 12.56. So that's your approximation for it. What about this one? The circumference of a circle is 8 pi. What is the area of the circle? Be careful. What are they giving you? Circumference. The circumference is equal to 8 pi, which means 2 pi r is equal to 8 pi. So what is the radius? We're going to divide both sides by 2 pi, and you get 4. What do they want? The area. So the area of a circle is pi r squared. 4 squared is 16. It's 16 pi square centimeters. That's what they're looking for. So the thing is be careful what they are asking for and what they are telling you. You have two formulas you're going to use. You're going to take one formula, use it to probably find the radius, and put it back into the other formula to find either area or circumference, depending on what they are asking for. You okay with that? What I need you to do as an exit ticket is I need you to look at, you can just use scratch paper if you would like. Your exit ticket is page 29. I need you to do A through D. Turn it in to me. And then your assignment that you get to work on tomorrow in class while I work with the other group. Your assignment is lesson 2 on page 29 as well. One through 30. Third period. Study hall in here on Wednesday. Lucky you. That extends this into Thursday. Okay? That means you have plenty of time to get it pre-checked. Questions? So do this now. Turn it in to me. And then I want you to do that. You can work on that in the back of the room tomorrow. Unless you know you got to really cram for something else. But, I mean, you will be working on something back there tomorrow. And there's your assignment. Do Thursday because of study hall Wednesday. Questions?